La da da, the Pikachu rice cake holder. Well, okay, let's be fair. I haven't seen a lot of stores with rice cakes in the United States. There are some, but at least right now it's a great home for good old Mega Man here. He's cozy, he's warm, he's getting ready for his next game coming out in less than 2 years. That's going to be a lot of fun, his 40th anniversary. So definitely looking forward to that. The age-old Brock calling them donuts. You know what? If donut shops wanted to start selling variations of rice cakes, I think you could pull it off. Put some cinnamon, sugar cinnamon around the rice, chocolate filled. There might be something there. Then we could, then Mega Man and me could talk about maybe finding him a new home. But he's doing well. Don't worry. I was playing Solstice, aka Lasagna, in Super Smash Bros. Melee the other night, and we had a lot of fun. You know, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, he's playing some Link, Ice Climbers, just great games in general. And after we were done, a bit later, after the stream was done, I started talking to him about just a lot of differences in how people play fighting games. And, lately when I stream Melee, I've had a lot of people quit in the middle of the game. And, for background knowledge, I play Yoshi. And in Melee, Yoshi is the only character that can't jump out of his shield. His grab also immediately goes on the Z-axis. So what that means is, in a fighting game, you have the option to grab with every character, right? That it's just a general thing in fighting games, most fighting games. The general rock, paper, scissors is hit beats grab, block beats hit, and then grab beats block. So it really is this kind of fun rock, paper, scissors. Obviously, there's a lot more to that, but for example, Yoshi's shield is the only shield that can't be poked. In Super Smash Bros., you have bubble shields, and they get smaller. So if you hit someone outside of the bubble, it breaks the guard, and you get your hit. So Yoshi does have that, but Melee is an interesting case where Yoshi can't jump out of shield, and when he starts his grab, rather than it going right in front of him and grabbing the opponent, his tongue kind of leans over. And so at first, the grab does not register on the opponent. It's a really interesting thing. I think Sakurai was pushing for Melee being a big tech marvel for the GameCube, going from the 64. And I still love Yoshi's grab and his shield. I think also Sakurai, because Yoshi could jump out of shield in Smash 64, but the creator, Masahiro Sakurai, he probably was, as he was experimenting with like light shielding and some of the new Melee tech, I think he was thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to have Yoshi not jump out of shield. I don't think that was an accident, because in Brawl, the next game in 2008, it's been about 7 years, and Yoshi still couldn't jump out of shield. And so that definitely was an on-purpose decision. So that being said, in that whole rock, paper, scissors dynamic, Yoshi can't jump out of shield, and his grab doesn't grab anyone at first. So what happens is, at a high competitive level, a lot of players try to capitalize off of that. They know that they block, it's going to take a while for Yoshi to grab them, unless Yoshi does his egg lay, which is a completely different type of grab. It's also pretty cool. They also know that if they pressure Yoshi in shield, he can't jump out of it. So he's got to do other things like rolling and, ledge dropping, or shield dropping. You can also drop from the ledge if they hit you far enough. Light shield, there's a lot of different tech you can do. So that being said, maining Yoshi in competitive Smash Bros. For many years now. He was my original character I first played when I first played 64 at my grandma's house. And when her neighbor Marshall and my cousin Connor and my Uncle Kent were playing Smash 64, I remember in the basement, I remember seeing Yoshi and a few other characters I recognized in that game. And so yeah, I've been playing Yoshi for a long time, and I play him because I love him, and he's awesome. Same thing for Donkey Kong. And what's interesting is, rather than make excuses like, oh, I can't jump out of shield, I'm always thinking, what can I do to adjust here, right? And so, again, I'm pushing things like rolling and shield dropping. So with all this being said, I'm working with my limitations and trying to find creative outlets. I've ran into opponents that get really, it looks like they get angry at me when I roll a lot. They think I'm mocking them, but I'm not. I don't know if some of them know that I can't jump out of shield. I don't know if some of them know that, my grab goes on the Z-axis. So I'm doing all these other things to condition them to not shield by throwing out a lot of hitboxes. I'm trying to keep my distance with eggs, a lot of different things like that. I'm trying to shroud potential things about Yoshi to not let them know that, hey, I can't jump out of shield, or I'm adapting accordingly and trying to push those strengths to where they might not think much about aspects like that for the character. So what this all comes down to is, in fighting games, there's what's called the neutral game. And, imagine Mario and Luigi just started on Battlefield, and they're left and right side. This is what's considered a neutral game, right? No one has like a pretty advantageous state. No one's caused knockdown on the other. No one's landed hits yet. So this kind of exchange of initiation, defense, offense, playing progressively, playing conservatively, this plays a big impact on how we all press buttons differently. And so I was talking to Lasagna about that invisible vertical line, the IVL. And it's in every fighting game. Whenever PvP is involved, the IVL is there. And, when you play Street Fighter and Ryu vs. Ken, there's that line straight in the middle. What are the characters willing to do to cross that line? They might both be throwing projectiles to keep a pretty safe distance. They might go for a rushdown and immediately cross the line. But something you realize in a game like Melee is, as people start learning about aspects of Yoshi, I've picked up on how many people want me to approach. They want me to jump over the line first, and right when I cross that invisible line, they usually have a punish prepared for me. And that punish can often involve by just shielding. If I come out towards them with a hit, they know that I can't grab them on the ground immediately, and so they shield it, and then they have a retaliation move. So by knowing that, I am trying to bait out shields to poke down. I'm trying to analyze their patterns, see where they're willing to go, be a lot more patient, be a lot more analytical while being patient, using that valuable time to analyze their patterns and tendencies. What I've noticed is some of these people that quit in the middle of the game, it's almost like they don't want to admit that I might be analyzing them. And then I talked to, Solstice about that, again, the invisible vertical line. And I think everyone has different tendencies on what they're willing and not willing to do to cross that line. There are some players where crossing that line scares them. If Yoshi's here and then Donkey Kong's here, I'm fighting a Donkey Kong player, here's the line. And I currently have the lead. If the time goes down and I have the most lives, I'm going to win. So I stand here and I'm going to say, what's the Donkey Kong willing to do, right? And there are times where they will not cross that line. It's like they are psychologically telling you that, I don't like taking risks. I like to play absolute safe. So I'm going to stay here. I'm going to try to taunt. I'm going to try to just dash dance in place to try to get you to budge. But what if I don't budge? And I've noticed that, not only is patience a virtue, but when patience might become rare in certain competitive environments, it can be a whole new factor that players might not want to accept that is there, just like the invisible vertical line. Because that line is, if a player knows that it exists, now you can mentally map out what is my opponent willing to cross? What are they willing to do? What risks are they willing to take? Especially if I'm going to win if time goes down, unless I make a mistake. And I've noticed a pattern of people, they're so, it seems, obviously a lot of these opponents are online, so I can't talk to them. But from what I've gathered is there are people that they practice so much in a routine. They'll pick Falco, who can shoot lasers from across the stage. But if I'm being really patient and I'm avoiding a lot of those lasers and I'm still on that life lead, or in this case having more lives than them, what are they willing to do? And I notice at times that they'll stand in place and they're willing to shed off like a minute of not doing much, and then they'll taunt, trying to get me to cross. And then if I don't budge, sometimes they leave. Sometimes they leave in a ranked match where points are on the line, and if you leave, I get points and you lose points. All of that instead of them willing to cross over a line. It's really fascinating, and I think it often says about what people, might bring with themselves to the game, right? So I'm here to play Melee because I love Nintendo, I love these characters, and I love competing. So to me, I love taking risks. I love using prediction. Games, I talk about poker all the time, I talk about Street Fighter all the time, Team Fortress 2. All those games involved a constant, measurement of risk and reward. I say measurement, but sometimes you just, you follow what you feel is in the game. You're like, I'm going to take a big risk here, right? You follow your instincts, your intuition. And so it's fascinating to play a game like Melee. And there are players that they're so used to creating routines of expectations. If they play Falco, they shoot lasers. If they shoot lasers, a character like Yoshi, whose only projectile takes a bit over 50 frames to finish while Yoshi's on the ground, they might think, oh, he's not going to compete with my lasers. But what if I don't give up? What if I keep throwing eggs regardless? What if I reposition, knowing that I can't jump out of shield, but if my opponent gets arrogant about that, what if I just keep avoiding the lasers, and the second they get impatient, the second they taunt, I go in and I try to go for a punish. This has happened multiple times where after they taunt, I use that to, get a punish, and then they leave the game. And it makes you wonder how many times people go into a game with preconceived expectations. And then when those expectations aren't met, what do? So again, that vertical invisible line, it's a constant there. And I think some people are in denial about it because that line is a reminder of, are you willing to be progressive and cross the line with risk? Or are you going to be conservative and stay behind the line? And guess what? I don't mind if people taunt. I don't personally do it. Well, other than, single player mode where you get the fighter stance score, which is cool. So I don't personally do it, but if other people do it, I think it's funny. It's part of the game. But again, it's just interesting to observe when people do things like that. It can give me information of, oh, they actually might want to shroud that they are afraid to take risks over the line. And like I said, once Melee gets to a higher level, there's a lot of people that they just rehearse their punishes over and over. The second you run into their rehearsal range, they're going to shield or they can dash back real quick. You throw out a move and then they punish it. And they're so accustomed to that when the situation comes to where they might have to cross the line in order to win, well, they don't even want to play the game anymore. It's really fascinating. So this all circles back to when I played Solstice, because for over 10 years that I've known him, he's a big risk taker. He uses his intuition to analyze what's going on, but he takes a lot of risks. He goes for a lot of hard reads. He mains Mario, and Mario is the type of character where a lot of his strengths rely off being creative because he's a jack of all trades, an all-around character. He has a bit of everything, but he doesn't have like a strict game plan of do X to Y for a KO in so many persistent scenarios. It's more about, okay, you can create your own Q, and that Q becomes a Y if the opponent does Z on this reaction, right? It's such an iceberg, deep iceberg type character, where on the surface, he's a very beginner-friendly character, but he has so much competitive depth at a high to top level because you have all these tools, but there's no tried and true Bible on how to play Mario. But I honestly think that's how that is for any character in fighting games. Is yes, there's obviously really strong combos to do, strong punishes. But I think the beauty of fighting games and the beauty of that vertical invisible wall is the psychological effect of what are you willing to change and do differently with the opponent in front of you? What are you willing to do if you feel you're nested, but that nest becomes undermined? Your whole foundation's shaken and that line's still there. Are you willing to take flight and go across it? Your opponent punished you when you crossed it, but are you willing to do it again but change up your approach? It's really fascinating, and I think it comes into life itself and how we, it could be from business negotiations to, developing friends and relationships. What are you willing to cross in that line? What are you willing to take risks for? What are you willing, from the dating game of bro, ask her out, to putting yourself out there in public and making new friends. Obviously, human boundaries are important, but the importance of putting yourself out there is its own thing about, crossing that line and seeing more of what could be rewarded when you do. there's punish involved there, but I think if you're not scared to take risks, but be smart about it with your analytical skills and developing those analytical skills, I think there's a lot of things that you can go far in life with by being able to analyze the constant push of playing conservatively and playing progressively. I love Mondays.